Hola everybody, Señorita Riley here. Today we are going to do some review on the comparisons of inequality and the comparative, and then we are going to be introduced to something called the superlative. So first, we are going to review the comparisons of inequality and also the comparative. So if you guys all would get out your notebooks, and I want you to take some notes on this and try to follow along with me, so that way you can really get the most out of this review that we're going to be doing. So the first thing that we're looking at is comparisons of inequality. And when we talk about that, basically we're talking about things that are unequal, right? So we're using más que and menos que to talk about those things. So when we have más que, we're talking about things more than, right? And when we're using menos que, we're saying less than. So he is more handsome than her, or she is less smart than him, right? So we're using these to talk about inequalities between two people or two things. Okay, so we're going to go over a couple of examples, and I tried to use our vocabulary that we have from our current vocab list for this chapter, so that way we can really apply it. So the vocabulary that we have is estar en forma. And does anybody remember what that means? Hopefully. Everybody repeat after me. Say estar en forma. Okay, so estar en forma means to be in shape. So if we were going to write a simple sentence about this, we would need to make sure to conjugate the verb estar based on who we're talking about. So a simple sentence might look something like this. Julia está en forma. Julia is in shape. So see, we took the verb estar and we converted it to está because we're talking about Julia. So it would be ella está, or Julia está en forma. Julia is in shape. Now, let's put the comparison of inequality in there. So we're going to use either más que or menos que with this estar en forma to get our comparison of inequality. So here's an example of what that would look like. We would say Julia está en más forma que Maria. So here we're saying Julia is in shape, but we're saying she's in more shape than Maria. So está en más forma que Maria is what that ends up being. So let's practice these vocabulary words again. Repeat after me. Say estar en forma. Good. Repeat after me. Say Julia está en forma. And repeat after me. Say Julia está en más forma que María. Very good. All right, let's do another example. So in this example, we're using the vocabulary llevar a una vida sana. Llevar una vida sana. Everybody repeat after me. Say llevar una vida sana. Good. So that one, hopefully you remember, means to live a healthy life. So if we were going to make this into a simple sentence, we need to convert llevar based on who we're talking about. So llevar is the verb that needs to be changed. So a simple sentence, we would say, Bob lleva una vida sana, because in this case we're talking about Bob or él. So we convert it to lleva. So Bob lleva una vida sana. We're saying he lives a healthy life. Now, if we wanted to say he lives a healthier life than somebody else, in that case, we're going to use our comparison of inequality, and we're going to use más que. So Bob lleva una vida más sana que Tom. So we're leaving it Bob lleva because we're still talking about Bob, but we're saying he lives a life, una vida, más sana, more healthy than tam, que tam. So let's go ahead and practice this vocabulary. Repeat after me. Llevar una vida sana. Bob lleva una vida sana. Bob lleva una vida más sana que Tom. Very good. We've got one more example on this. This example, we are using levantar pesas. Repeat after me. Say levantar pesas. So if we're making a simple sentence, levantar is going to be our verb to lift, and pesas means weights. So we are going to be lifting weights. Levantar pesas. So our simple sentence would look something like this. Sam levanta pesas. So Sam, which would be él, Sam levanta pesas. Okay, so we take levantar and we convert it into the L form of the verb, which is levanta. So if we're bringing in a comparison of inequality, here's one with the menos que. So Sam levanta, Sam lifts, we leave that the same as the simple sentence. Sam levanta menos pesos que Pablo. So Sam lifts less weights than Pablo. So repeat after me. Levantar pesas. Sam levanta pesas. Sam levanta menos pesas que Pablo. Very good. And you might have noticed that I did have a little error in this because it should be menos pesas, not pesos. Pesos are money in Mexico. So my bad, but that's all right. All right. Now let's take a look at the comparative. This is what we were learning about the last time that we had class. So we use the comparative to describe things that are equal. So we were just describing things that are not equal. Now we're describing things that are equal. So we have three basic ways to say that things are equal in Spanish, and we're going to go through each of those three ways, and we're going to do an example of each. So the first thing that we have is using tan with an adjective in between it and como. So we have tan como, but with the adjective that would be inserted in between. So the example that I'm going to give you, the vocabulary we're going to use is saludable, which you should know from our vocab list means healthy. Everybody say saludable. So if we were going to make a simple sentence with saludable, we're going to use the verb ser, and so we are going to convert the verb ser to talk about something is healthy. So here's a simple sentence. We have manzanas son saludable. So manzanas are apples. So when we use apples, we're talking about something plural. So we use the plural form of the verb ser, which would be son, to say apples are, and then we have saludable, healthy. Okay? If we were going to use the comparative for this, we are going to say manzanas son tan saludable como bananas. So see, we have tan, the adjective in the middle, and then como, and then what we're comparing it to. So they are as healthy as bananas. Okay, so repeat after me. Say saludable. Repiten, manzanas son saludable. Repiten, manzanas son tan saludable como bananas. Very good. All right, that's the first example. So it's tan with an adjective in between it and then como. All right, the next way that we have is with tanto como. So tanto como basically means as much as or as many as. So here we're going to use the vocabulary word sudar, which is to sweat. So a simple sentence, we're going to change sudar based on who we're talking about. So if it's Leila, it'd be ella, right? So Leila suda, that means Leila sweats, okay? But so now we want to say that Leila sweats as much as someone else. So our comparative would be Leila suda tanto como Eva. So now we're saying Leila sweats as much as Eva. So there is an example where we're going to use tanto como in a sentence. The final way that we can do the comparative is with tanto, tanta, tantos, tantas, and then a noun, and then como. The reason that there are 4 different options for the tanto is because it needs to reflect what the noun says. So if the noun is feminine or masculine, if the noun is singular or plural, that's going to determine which form of tanto you're going to use with that noun. So here's an example of that one. We're going to use the vocabulary hacer ejercicio. Everybody repiten, hacer ejercicio. Good. So to talk about somebody exercises, we're saying something like Nick hace ejercicio. So we changed hacer to hace. Nick hace ejercicio 5 días por semana. We're saying he works out 5 days a week. Okay. So if we're using the comparative, we might want to say he works out as many days as someone else. So we would say Nick hace ejercicio tantos días como Rick. So because días is that noun, días is plural and it's also masculine. So that's how we ended up with tantos for días. So we have Nick hace ejercicio tantos días como Rick. So that's the third example with the tanto, noun, como. And again, let's just practice this. Repeat after me. Hacer ejercicio. Repiten. Nick hace ejercicio 5 días por semana. Nick hace ejercicio tantos días como Rick. All right, muy bien, everybody. All right, so now I think we are ready to move on to today's topic, which is the superlative. So I don't have a handout for you for this lesson, but you are going to want to take notes on this, and there is going to be a quiz the next time I see you. I'll tell you what specifically that's on, but please make sure that you are taking notes, especially now that we're on the new topic. So we're talking about the superlative, and we use the superlative to point out like the most, the best, the least, the fastest, things like that. So usually it's like the EST ending that we put on the end of things to kind of explain that they are like the extremes, right? So we're going to learn a little bit more about doing that today. So in Spanish, we generally use más de and menos de to do this, to form a superlative. Okay, so we also are going to use the definite articles when we form the superlative, and you'll see what I mean by that. But remember that the definite articles are the 4 articles that mean the. So you guys know we have el, which is masculine singular, la, which is feminine singular, los, which is masculine plural, and las, which is feminine plural. So you guys already know that. I know that we've gone over that. You're probably sick of hearing about it. But those are the definite articles, and they all mean the. Those are going to be found when we form a superlative. So let's do an example. So again, we're going to go back to saludable as our vocabulary. So that means healthy once again. So everybody repiten, saludable. Okay, so here's a simple sentence with saludable. Manzanas son frutas saludables. Okay, so now we're going to form a sentence. Basically, we want to say that apples, manzanas, are the healthiest fruits. So that's where we're going to form the superlative. So healthiest would be that est ending. So for the superlative, we are going to write something like this. Manzanas son las frutas más saludables de los todos. So apples are fruits that are the most healthy of all. Let's do another example. So here our vocabulary is fuerte. Go ahead and repeat after me. Say fuerte. Fuerte means strong. So we're talking about someone being strong. So here's a simple sentence. Remember, we're using the verb ser because we're saying he is strong. So Tim es fuerte. He is strong. So when we want to go ahead and form the superlative, what we want to say is that Tim is the strongest. So here we have Tim es el hombre más fuerte de los amigos. So Tim is the man most strong, or the strongest man of the friend group. Okay, so see where I underlined el, because that's showing that he is the man most strong of the friends, is what it literally translates to. So that's where we talk about using that definite article. So in addition to using más que and más de and menos de to form superlatives, we also have a couple of other things that we're going to look at that are a little bit irregular, so we have to take specific notes on it. So an example of that is going to be the words that we use for good, better, and best. So if we want to say that something is good, we know that good is an adjective, and so it has to match with the noun it's describing, which means that we have 4 different options of how the word could end. We have bueno, which is masculine and singular. Buena is masculine and feminine. Buenos is masculine plural, and buenas is feminine plural. So we have those are all adjectives to say something is good, right? But then we also want the adjective better. So remember how we talked about adjectives that end in O normally? Those are the ones that are going to have 4 different ways, because you have to look at the feminine, masculine, and the singular plural. So since mejor, which means better, doesn't end in a vowel, it doesn't end in O, we don't have to change it to an A if it's still singular. The only time we have to change it is if it is plural. So mejor could be for feminine or masculine singular. Mejores could be for feminine or masculine plural. And then when we get to talking about someone is the best, right? Then we're using that, it's a noun now. So we went from the adjectives saying something is good, something is better, but now we're saying something is the best. So when we have a noun, we have to have that definite article that comes before it. So here we can see that once again, mejor doesn't change for el and la, but it does change to mejores when we're talking about los and las. But if we're talking about a girl being the best, we have to use the article la before it, so that way we know we're talking about a girl. So hopefully you guys wrote down all of these, because these are some of the things that are going to be on the quiz that is coming up. If you need to pause right now, that's fine, so that you can all get it written down. Otherwise, let's move on. So here's an example of using the good, better, best. So here we're talking about el mejor, which is the best, and we know that we're talking about either a person or an object that is masculine because it's el mejor. So here's a simple sentence. Ned es un jugador de golf. We're saying Ned is a golf player. But if we want to say Ned is the best golf player, we would say Ned es el mejor jugador de golf de su equipo. So now we're saying he is the best player of golf on his team. So see where we're putting in el mejor. All right, so similar to the good, better, and best, we also have the bad, worse, and the worst. So once again, we have bad it's malo, so that means that since it ends in an O, we have to look at feminine and masculine, and we have to look at singular and plural. So malo, mala, malos, malas. So those are based on, is it feminine, is it masculine, is it singular, is it plural? Now when we talk about something is worse, once again, that one doesn't end in an O regularly. So for those ones, it's going to be the same if it's feminine or masculine. So we only have to make a change to the word if we're talking about something that is plural. When we get to talking about the worst, we are going to be talking about the el peor, la peor, los peores, las peores. So once again, the peor and peores, those are the same. So we're looking at if it's singular or if it's plural. But if you're talking about somebody or something that is feminine, you need to make sure that you use la peor or las peores, because those indicate that either the person or the object is feminine. Let's look at an example of this one. So we're using los peores as the vocabulary here. So when we talk about los peores, we're saying that these are the worst, and we know that it's masculine, which means that it's either all men or a group of men and women that are the worst. So here's a simple sentence. Manzanas son malas. We're saying apples are bad, right? Now, if we want to say that apples are the worst, we would say manzanas son las peores frutas del mundo. So we're saying apples are the worst fruits in the world. All right. Now we have older and the oldest. These are talking about, family members. So older would be an adjective to say, oh, he is my older brother or my older siblings, something like that. But when we want to say someone is the oldest, we are going to take those and add the definite articles before them. So we have mayor and mayores, which are both mean older. Once again, does not end in O, which is good because that means that we don't have to worry about feminine or masculine. We only have to worry about if it's singular or plural for it using it as an adjective. But if we're talking about the oldest, then we're actually making that into a noun. If it's a noun, it needs to have a definite article. If it needs to have a definite article, that could either be el, la, los, or las, depending on if it's feminine or masculine, and if it's singular or plural. So we have el mayor, la mayor, los mayores, and las mayores. Those are going to be the 4 options when we're talking about the oldest. So here's an example with that one. We're using mayor and la mayor. So a simple sentence, mi hermana se llama Tiara. My sister's name is Tiara. Here's a superlative example, mi hermana mayor se llama Tiara. So we're saying my older sister is named Tiara. Okay, so in that case, we're using mayor, we're using an adjective to describe my sister. But then here, if we look at it, we're saying mi hermana Tiara es la mayor de los hijos en mi familia. So now we're actually saying my sister Tiara is the oldest of the kids in my family. So in that case, we're telling people that she is the oldest. So we've used it as a noun in this case rather than using it as a adjective. So we do the similar thing with younger and the youngest. So write down menor and menores. So those ones are, little. I kind of think of it like minor, like they're minor, they're the little ones, the younger ones. So menor and menores are the adjective. To make it into a noun, we have to put that, the word before it. So we either are going to use el, la, los or las before that word in order to convert it into a noun, depending on if it's feminine or masculine and if it's singular or if it's plural. So let's look at an example with this one. So we're going to use menores and los menores, so we know we're talking masculine here. So here's a simple sentence. Mis hermanos se llaman Pepe y Paco. So we're saying my brothers are named Pepe y Paco. But if we want to make it the superlative, we're going to use menores first, which is the adjective. So mis hermanos menores se llaman Pepe y Paco. So my little brothers are named Pepe y Paco. So here we're saying that they're little brothers. It's an adjective describing the brothers. And so we use menores because we're talking about brothers. So it's plural, more than one brother. But we can also use los menores to say that my brothers are the youngest in the family. Mis hermanos Pepe y Paco son los menores de la familia. So here we're saying that my brothers Pepe y Paco are the youngest in the family. All right, so hopefully all of that information makes sense to you and that you got some good notes. So I am not going to see you until November 8th, but on November 8th, I'd like for you to be prepared for a quiz on the good, better, best, the bad, worse, and worst, the older and the oldest, and the younger and the youngest, those slides. So the things that you wrote down from those slides, you are going to need to know for your quiz next week. So next class, hopefully you get in both video lessons this week. Next class, we're going to do more examples with the superlative and with these things that are going to be on the quiz. But I'd like for you to start studying so that way you can ace the quiz on November 8th. So please get out your assignment notebook and write down. You have 3 things to do for homework. So the first thing is that you should complete your journal entry for the class. So you by now should have those questions pretty down pat. Write out your journal entry so that way I can take a look at that when I see you on November 8th. I want you to study for your quiz on the superlative words because, you know, studying is the only way you're going to get a good grade. And then finally, I want you to go on Voces and go to the Game Center, which is across the bottom toolbar. There's the Game Center there. And I just want you to spend 30 minutes over the next week practicing and playing the games on Voces for this chapter, so that way you can really get familiar with the vocabulary and really get a solid handle on it. So I can see through Voces how much time you've spent on the site and how much time you spend in the Game Center. So I'll be checking that to give you some credit. But you know, even if you spend 5 minutes a night or something like that working on the games in Voces, you'll see that it'll really help you to learn everything a little bit more, but also you know, it'll be a piece of cake sort of homework for you. So so that is it. That's all I've got for you. If you have any questions, you can email me at hriley@sthelen.com. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. And otherwise, I will see you on November 8th. Adios.